I can still remember the exact moment when my stomach dropped. Like I was on one of those roller coasters at Six Flags that I used to ride as a teenager, when your whole body feels weightless and you're caught between screaming and silence. It was June 11th, 2021, a humid Friday afternoon, and I was sitting in my car outside my office in Baltimore, the AC on full blast, but doing nothing to stop the sweat rolling down my back. My phone buzzed, just a simple notification, but the photo that popped up on my screen changed everything. It was a picture of my wife, Emily, laughing in a way I hadn't seen her laugh in years. The problem wasn't the laugh, it was the fact that she was in Philadelphia, not Boston, like she had told me, and she wasn't alone. She was with, I didn't know who him was at the time, but the way her body leaned toward him in that photo, the way her hand almost brushed against his, it was enough to shatter the thin ice I'd been skating on in our marriage. My chest tightened, my hands shook, and for a second I couldn't breathe. I stared at the picture until my vision blurred, like if I looked long enough maybe the man's face would morph into something innocent, but it didn't. That moment, the buzzing phone, the picture, the truth I couldn't unsee, that's the moment my life split into before and after. But to understand how I got there, I guess I need to back up. Emily and I had been married for 8 years at that point. We met in 2012 at a mutual friend's barbecue in Arlington, Virginia. She was the kind of person you noticed right away. Dark hair, green eyes, the kind of laugh that made people turn their heads. I wasn't exactly smooth, but somehow I made her laugh enough to get her number. We started dating, fell hard and fast, and within 2 years we were married. Looking back now, I wonder if we rushed things, if we built the foundation of our marriage too quickly, before really knowing what kind of cracks could show up later. In the early years, everything felt like a montage from one of those cheesy rom-coms. Emily loved weekend trips to New York, late-night pizza runs, binge-watching Breaking Bad on the couch. We used to dream out loud about our future kids, a house with a backyard, maybe even a golden retriever. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt good, solid. But things started to shift around. Emily got promoted at work, and her new role meant more travel, more late nights, more stress. I was proud of her. She worked in marketing for a tech company in DC, and she was damn good at it. But somewhere along the line, her job became the center of her universe. I'd come home from my job at the accounting firm, and the apartment would be dark, her laptop still open on the kitchen table. We'd eat dinner together less and less. When we did, the conversations felt transactional, like she was mentally somewhere else. I told myself it was just a phase. Everyone has ups and downs, right? I thought once things settled at her company, we'd get back to us. But the distance only grew. She started taking more business trips, Boston, Chicago, sometimes San Francisco. I tried not to question it. I wanted to be the supportive husband, the one who didn't nag or accuse. I trusted her. Or maybe I wanted to believe I trusted her, because the alternative felt too painful to face. Still, there were little red flags, the kind you notice but push to the back of your mind. She'd guard her phone like it was state secrets. She'd laugh at texts she never showed me. Her scent would sometimes change, different perfume, a shampoo I didn't recognize. Once in early 2020, right before the pandemic shut everything down, I found a receipt for a dinner at a steakhouse in Philly. She'd told me she was in Boston that night. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, said it was a client dinner, and the receipt must have printed with the wrong city. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. So I did. And then 2020 happened. The world shut down, and suddenly we were home together all the time. At first, I thought it was exactly what we needed. We cooked together, we tried those stupid TikTok dances, we even built a puzzle that took up half the dining table. But even in lockdown, even with all that time, I could feel her slipping away. She'd spend hours on Zoom calls with her camera mysteriously turned off. She'd go for long walks, and come back with that same distracted look in her eyes. By the time the world opened up again in 2021, things between us were fragile, but I still held on to hope. I still thought we could fix it, until that day in June. I hadn't planned on finding out. I wasn't snooping, I wasn't playing detective. My buddy Mike had gone to Philly for a Phillies game, and posted a bunch of pictures on Instagram. Emily just happened to be in the background of one of them, at a bar sitting way too close to a guy I didn't know. That's all it took. One careless moment, one stranger's photo, and the facade shattered. As I sat in my car staring at that photo, 100 memories flashed through my mind like a cruel highlight reel. The time we danced in our kitchen to Ed Sheeran, barefoot on the tile floor. The Christmas morning in 2016 when she surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band in London. The night she cried in my arms when her father passed away. All of it played in my head, twisted now, tainted by the knowledge that while I was holding on, she was already slipping away to someone else. And here's the thing. I wasn't even angry at first. I was. Shock has a way of dulling everything, like your brain puts you in emotional quarantine, so you don't implode right away. But beneath the numbness, a seed of something darker started to grow, not just betrayal but humiliation, because suddenly I realized how blind I'd been, how I'd ignored every red flag, every late night, every flimsy excuse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the sound of the city outside filtering in through the window. Sirens, car horns, the distant rumble of a train, all of it felt sharper somehow, like the whole world was louder than it used to be. Emily was in Boston that night, so I was alone in our apartment, alone with my thoughts, my doubts, and that damn photo burned into my brain. I kept thinking about who he was, a coworker, a client, some random guy she met on one of her trips. I imagined him taller than me, funnier than me, more exciting than the boring accountant husband she came home to. My mind spiraled, inventing details I couldn't confirm but couldn't silence either. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. And yet even in that storm of doubt, a part of me still clung to denial. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was just a work thing, a group setting, a bad angle, maybe. But deep down I already knew the truth. I could feel it in my gut, the way you just know when something is wrong, even before the evidence piles up. That weekend I tried to act normal. When Emily came home Sunday evening, suitcase rolling behind her, she kissed me on the cheek like always. She smelled faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine. My heart pounded, but I smiled anyway. I asked her how Boston was, and she launched into a rehearsed story about client meetings and hotel rooms. I nodded, pretending to listen, all the while thinking about that photo in Philly. Looking back, that was the beginning of the end. The moment the trust I had built my marriage on crumbled beneath my feet. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't scream or throw accusation. Instead, I carried that knowledge inside me like a shard of glass, cutting deeper with every passing day. And the worst part, I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the truth head on, because once I did, once I said it out loud, there would be no going back. The following week felt like living in a dream where everything looked the same but felt slightly off, like reality had been tampered with. I went to work, I filed reports, I answered emails, I laughed at stupid jokes Mike made in the office, but inside I was unraveling. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened. Every time Emily smiled at me across the dinner table, I wondered if she was thinking of him instead. I became hyper-aware of every detail, the way she kept her phone face down on the counter, the way she suddenly cared about her appearance before work trips, buying new dresses or spritzing perfumes I didn't recognize. I told myself maybe I was paranoid, maybe I was inventing scenarios in my head, but then I'd remember the photo. The photo was. My paranoia wasn't unfounded. It was evidence of something I couldn't unsee. On June 24th, she told me she had to go to Boston again. Another 3-day trip. Another round of hotel stays and client meetings. She said it so casually, like it was nothing, like she hadn't just come back from a Boston trip that turned out to be Philadelphia. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my insides were boiling. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the couch in the dark, with only the glow of my laptop screen. I typed how to catch a cheating spouse into Google, and immediately hated myself for it. It felt pathetic, like something out of a bad sitcom. But the truth was, I didn't know what else to do. The internet gave me 100 suggestions. Check her phone, hire a private investigator, track her credit card statements. I clicked through forums filled with people just like me, clinging to fragments of suspicion, desperate for clarity. By midnight, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to hire anyone. I wasn't going to confront her without proof. I was going to see for myself. When June 28th rolled around, I told Emily I had to stay late at the office to close out the court. She kissed me goodbye, wheeled her suitcase to the Uber waiting outside, and just like that she was gone. I waited 30 minutes before grabbing my keys and heading out. I drove up I-95 in silence, no music, no podcasts, just the sound of the tires humming against the asphalt. The closer I got to Philadelphia, the more my stomach twisted. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I kept asking myself what I was doing. What if I was wrong? What if I was about to blow up my marriage over a misunderstanding? But then I'd see the image in my mind. Emily leaning toward that man, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, and I pressed the gas harder. By the time I pulled into Center City, it was close to night. The streets were alive with people spilling out of restaurants and bars. The humid summer air, carrying the smell of fried food and car exhaust. I parked a block away from the Marriott where Emily usually stayed for work and sat there for a good 10 minutes. My heart pounding like a drum. Finally I stepped out, blending into the crowd, my hood pulled low. I felt ridiculous, like some second-rate spy, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I slipped into the lobby, pretending to check my phone, scanning the room for her. Nothing. I waited in the lobby for nearly an hour, pacing near the elevators, pretending to be bored. At one point I almost convinced myself to leave, to abandon this stupid mission and drive home, but then I saw her. Emily walked in through the revolving doors, her hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. She looked radiant, glowing even, and it made my chest ache, but she wasn't alone. The man from the photo was with her, tall dark hair, maybe mid-30s. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. They were laughing, his hand brushing the small of her back as they walked toward the elevators. My whole body went cold. It was like being dunked into ice water. Everything slowed down. The sound of their laughter, the ding of the elevator, the way Emily leaned into him like he was hers. I wanted to scream, to run across the lobby and demand answers, but my legs felt glued to the floor. They disappeared into the elevator, and I was left staring at my reflection in the polished marble floor, my face pale and twisted with disbelief. I don't remember leaving the hotel. 1 second I was frozen in the lobby, and the next I was back in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard, my fingers cramped, my whole body shook, my ears rang with the sound of her laugh, my vision blurred with tears I didn't even realize were falling. The drive back to Baltimore was a blur of headlights and highway signs. I don't think I blinked once the whole way. My mind replayed the scene over and over, each time cutting deeper. There was no more denial, no more maybe it's innocent. It was real. She was with him. She wasn't mine anymore. When I walked into our apartment at 1 a.m., the place smelled faintly of her perfume. Her suitcase was gone, her side of the closet slightly emptier. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the space where she usually slept, and I broke. My chest heaved, ugly sobs ripping through me in the dark. I hadn't cried like that since my dad's funeral when I was 17. The next morning I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone. I spent the day lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, numb and hollow. My phone buzzed a few times. Emily checking in, saying meetings are exhausting, wish you were here. I didn't reply. The words felt like knives. Over the next couple of days, I spiraled. I didn't eat much. I barely slept. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for the signs I'd missed, the lies she'd told. I thought about our wedding day, September 14th, 2014, the way she'd looked walking down the aisle in that lace gown. I thought about the honeymoon in Italy, the sunset in Positano, the promise she whispered to me as we stood on the balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast. Forever, she'd said, forever. Now forever felt like a cruel joke. On July 1st, she came home. She walked through the door like nothing had happened, kissed me on the cheek, dropped her suitcase by the closet. She started talking about how busy Boston had been, how exhausting the meetings were, and I just stood there, staring at her, wondering how someone could lie so effortless. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to throw the truth in her face, but another part of me, maybe the bigger part, was terrified of what she'd say, terrified of hearing the confirmation out loud, because once the words left her mouth, there would be no undoing it. So I swallowed my rage, my heartbreak, and pretended. I asked her about the meetings, nodded at her stories, forced a smile when she laughed. All the while my insides burned, but pretending couldn't last forever. The breaking point came on July 4th, Independence. Mike had invited us to his backyard barbecue, fireworks, burgers, the usual. Emily begged off, saying she was too tired from her trip. That was my first clue. Emily loved the 4th. She loved sparklers, and grilling and sitting on a blanket watching fireworks explode over the harbor. But that year, she wanted nothing to do with it. So I went alone, and that's when everything unraveled. Halfway through the night, as we sat on lawn chairs drinking cheap beer, Mike leaned over and asked how Emily was doing. I said she was fine, just busy with work. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. Funny, he said, I could have sworn I saw her in Philly again last week when I was there for the game. She was walking with that same guy from the bar. It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. Mike didn't know what I knew, didn't realize the photo had already cracked me open, but hearing it from someone else, unprompted, confirmed everything. She wasn't just slipping away, she was gone. That night, as fireworks boomed over the city skyline, I sat alone on the hood of my car,
watching red, white and blue light explode across the sky. Everyone around me cheered and clapped, kids waved sparklers, couples kissed, and I just sat there hollow, thinking about how my marriage was burning down in silence, unseen by anyone else. I went home after midnight, the smell of gunpowder still clinging to my clothes. Emily was asleep, curled up on her side of the bed, breathing evenly like nothing in the world was wrong. I lay down next to her, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a ghost in my own life. And in that moment I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep bleeding silently while she lived a double life. Whether I liked it or not, the confrontation was coming. The morning after July 4th, I woke up feeling like I'd aged a decade overnight. Emily was already gone, probably out for one of her long runs, by the waterfront, earbuds in, pretending her life was picture perfect. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, its blades slicing through the air in slow hypnotic circles, wondering how much longer I could live this double life. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just sit quietly in the corner of your mind. It spreads. It seeps into everything. Coffee tastes bitter. Music feels hollow. Even the sunlight streaming through the blinds annoyed me, like the world had no right to keep turning while my life was unraveling. At work, I was a shell of myself. Numbers swam on the spreadsheets. Phone calls became unbearable. Mike noticed, of course. He asked if I was all right, and I gave the standard "just tired, end of the quarter, you know how it is" line. But I think he knew. Friends can sense when you're not okay, even if you lie through your teeth. At home, Emily moved around me like nothing had changed. She cooked pasta one night, asked if I wanted to watch The Crown together, kissed me on the cheek before bed. The routine should have felt comforting, but it made me sick. Every smile felt fake, every laugh sounded rehearsed, and yet I played along, because I didn't know what else to do. Sleep became impossible. I'd lie awake listening to the city sounds outside, the occasional siren, the low hum of traffic on I-83, and imagine her with him. Was he holding her the way I used to? Was she telling him secrets she never told me? I hated the pictures my brain conjured, but I couldn't stop them. They were poison I couldn't spit out. One night, maybe around July 10th, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Our trip to London in 2017, standing in front of Big Ben with matching scarves. Thanksgiving 2019, her head on my shoulder as we sat by the fireplace at my mom's place in Richmond. For a moment I convinced myself those memories were still real, still ours, but then I remembered where she'd been, just 2 weeks earlier, and the nostalgia curdled into grief. I started noticing how isolated I'd become. My mom called a few times, her voice soft with concern, but I brushed her off. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. My sister Rachel texted me a TikTok about some stupid trend, and asked when Emily and I were coming to visit. I typed out soon and hit send, even though the truth was, I didn't know if Emily and I would ever show up anywhere together again. The walls felt like they were closing in. Baltimore in July is sweltering, sticky heat that clings to your skin, the smell of asphalt and fried food lingering in the air, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave the apartment most days. The city felt too alive while I was drowning. Emily kept up the charade. More trips, more late nights. She told me she had to fly to San Francisco on July 15th for a big client presentation. I nodded, like always, but inside I was screaming. How many lies had she told? How many cities had she really been to? How many nights had she spent in someone else's bed, while I sat here waiting like a fool? By then, my mental health was unraveling. I started drinking more than I should, whiskey mostly, poured neat in the kitchen at midnight, the burn in my throat, the only thing that made me feel alive. I told myself it was temporary, just a way to take the edge off, but deep down, I knew I was trying to numb myself against the truth. Work became an afterthought. I missed deadlines, forgot meetings, snapped at colleagues who didn't deserve it. My boss called me in one morning and asked if everything was okay at home. I lied, of course, said I was just burned out, promised to get back on track, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't believe me. The hardest part was the loneliness. Even when Emily was home, I felt like I was living with a stranger. We'd sit side by side on the couch, her scrolling through Instagram, me pretending to watch TV, and the silence between us was deafening. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand she tell me the truth, but instead I sat there, trapped by fear. Fear of the answer, fear of losing the woman I'd built my life around. And then there was the humiliation. That was a whole other beast. I kept imagining what people would think if they knew. If Mike told someone else, if Rachel found out, if my mom looked at me with pity in her eyes. I pictured the whispers, the sideways glances. Poor guy, didn't even see it coming. I couldn't stomach the thought of being that man. The spiral got darker in late July. I stopped going out with friends, stopped answering calls. My apartment became both my prison and my hiding place. Emily noticed, of course. She asked if I was okay, and I said I was just tired. That became my stock answer. Tired. Always tired. And in a way it was true. I was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, physically, from carrying the weight of her betrayal. On July 21st, the dam nearly broke. Emily was in the shower, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally she never left it unattended, but this time she did. My hands shook as I stared at the screen lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. Mark. My gut told me it was him. I picked it up. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might drown out the sound of the water running. The text was short. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My knees buckled. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the carpet with a soft thud. I stood there, staring at it like it was a bomb about to detonate. That was the proof I'd been pretending not to need. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was when Emily came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, pale and silent. She asked what was wrong, but I couldn't form the words. My throat felt like it was closing, so I said nothing. I just lay back down and closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, while my heart shattered into a million pieces. The following days were unbearable. Knowing his name made it worse. Mark. It sounded so ordinary, so harmless, but he was the man dismantling my marriage piece by piece. I started imagining his life. Did he live in Philly? Was he married too? Did he know about me? Or was I just a ghost in the background of his affair? I couldn't stop thinking about him, about them. It consumed me. I'd be at the grocery store and see a couple laughing over which pasta to buy, and rage would bubble up inside me. Why did they get to be happy while my life was collapsing? Why did Emily get to live a double life, while I rotted in silence? By the end of July, my body was betraying me as much as Emily was. I couldn't eat without feeling nauseous. My jeans hung loose around my waist. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked hollow. My eyes bloodshot. My skin pale. I barely recognized myself. The breaking point of the fallout came on August 2nd. Emily packed a bag, kissed me goodbye, and said she had another Boston trip. I didn't even nod this time. I just stared at her, my silence heavy. She looked uneasy for a moment, then plastered on a smile and left. When the door shut behind her, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep bleeding quietly, while she lived her fantasy life. I needed to take back control, even if it destroyed me in the process. That night, I called Rachel. It was past midnight, but she answered groggily, her voice laced with concern. I didn't give her details, just said, I don't think Emily is who I thought she was. My voice cracked as the words came out. She was silent for a long time, then told me to come visit her in Richmond, to get out of the city for a while. I promised I'd think about it, but deep down, I knew I wasn't ready to run. Not yet. Not until I confronted the storm head on. Because if there was one thing the fallout taught me, it was this: pretending was killing me faster than the truth ever could.
The truth sat heavy in the room. After my wife's confession, my whole life with her suddenly felt like a well-acted play. And I was the fool in the audience. But instead of breaking down, something inside me shifted. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. I started to notice small things. Her phone that was once glued to her hand now lay face down on the table. Her late-night meetings suddenly ended much earlier than usual, and her nervous glances told me she knew I wasn't as blind as I used to be. That's when I decided, if she was hiding secrets, I was going to uncover them all. Quietly, carefully, I began turning the tables. I reached out to a close friend who worked in IT security. With his help, I gained access to backups of her messages, and what I found didn't just confirm the affair, it revealed something darker. It wasn't just about another man. There were conversations about money, hidden accounts, and a plan that didn't just involve betraying me emotionally, but financially too. The anger inside me burned, but I forced myself to stay calm, because now I had leverage. Now I was no longer the victim, I was the one holding the cards. The real question was, how was I going to play them? When I uncovered the truth about the money, everything inside me snapped into sharp focus. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival, dignity, and justice. My wife, the woman I once believed was my partner in everything, wasn't just sneaking off to another city with a man she swore was just a friend. She was building a future without me, and she wanted to strip me bare on her way out. For days, I carried this knowledge like a hidden weapon. I went about my routine with a cold precision. Breakfast together. I smiled. Her little stories about work. I nodded. Nights in bed where she turned away from me. I stared at the ceiling, memorizing every detail of what I knew was coming. She thought I was still broken, still fumbling in the dark, but the truth was, I was already 10 steps ahead. I hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but a tough-as-nails woman named Karen, who specialized in cases like mine, the kind who didn't flinch when I slid the evidence across her desk. Screenshots of messages, bank transfers, emails where she and her lover mocked me behind my back. Karen looked me dead in the eye and said, "We're going to burn them both to the ground." For the first time in months, I felt alive. I staged it carefully. I let her go on her next business trip. Except this time, I followed. Not in a car parked on the street like some pathetic husband in a sitcom, but with strategy. I booked into the same hotel she and her lover had chosen. I made sure to check in first to know the lay of the land. The moment I saw them walk into the lobby together, laughing, her hand brushing his arm like she used to brush mine, I felt the old rage threatening to spill, but I held it in, clutching my phone in my pocket, because I wasn't there for a scene. I was there for proof. Photos, videos, receipts, evidence that would leave no shadow of a doubt in court. And when I finally confronted her, I didn't do it in private. No, I walked right up to their dinner table, looked her in the eye, and with the calmest voice I'd ever managed, I said, "You don't need to lie anymore. I know everything." She froze. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. The restaurant went quiet around her, but I didn't stay to hear her excuses. I walked away, and that was the last time I spoke to her face to face. The divorce was brutal, but the evidence turned it in my favor. The hidden accounts, exposed. The affair, documented. She lost nearly everything she thought she could take from me. And that man she risked it all for, he didn't last. 6 months after she moved in with him, he left her for someone else. Sometimes I wonder if that was her karma. Sometimes I wonder if I should even care. But here's what I know. The moment I stopped letting her write my story, I found my own strength. I rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, but honestly. I poured myself into my work, into friendships I had neglected, into the quiet hobbies that reminded me I was more than just someone's husband. And in that silence, in that space where I thought I had lost everything, I realized something. Betrayal doesn't define you. What you do after does. So when people ask me now, do you regret it? Do you regret marrying her, loving her, trusting her? I tell them no, because if I hadn't lived through it, I wouldn't know the man I am today. And when I think back to that night, her laughing in another city with him, believing I would never find out, I smile, because she thought she was in control of the story. But in the end, I was the one who wrote the last chapter.